Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Going to give everyone just a few minutes to log on, but we have a ton of slides and a lot to get through today. So we've got to be mindful of everyone's time. Welcome to From One-Time Gifts to Lifelong Relationships, the Art and Science of Sustainer Programs. We're here with Kim Richardson and Amy Reynolds. Got a few housekeeping slides to get started. We'll start there. Today's webinar is being recorded, and please use the functionality. We've got the chat and the Q&A if you have questions. We'll be happy to take a few questions at the end as long as there's time. I'd like to remind everyone of all of the amazing solutions we have here at AGP. If you have an important goal, we are thrilled to leverage our blend of data, technology, and award-winning creative to drive your fundraising and marketing success. And we are really proud to partner with leading organizations across the following sectors. We work with hospitals, animal welfare, public media, arts and culture, health and human services, food banks, faith organizations, and educational institutions. And I'm really thrilled to introduce you to today's presenters. We have Kim Richardson, our Associate Vice President of Client Strategy, and Amy Reynolds, the Director of Client Strategy. Just to kick things off today, we have a quick poll. So I'd like to ask you, where are you guys at your sustainer giving journey? I'm going to give everyone a few minutes to answer here. Whether you don't have a program but are really excited to start one, you have a program but maybe it needs some stronger results, or you have a program and it's doing all right but you're really ready to take it to the next level. Still see some answers pouring in. All right. Let's wrap this up and see what we've got. Okay, looks like 21% are looking forward to starting a sustainer giving program really soon. 35% have a program but are really looking for stronger results. And 45% of you guys already have a program in place. It's doing great and are looking to take it to the next level. I think no matter where you're at in your journey, Kim and Amy are going to be able to help you take that to the next level. So with that, I'll kick it off to you, Kim and Amy. Take it over.
Good morning, or I guess I should say good afternoon, everyone. I'm really happy to be here with you guys. Here internally at AGP, I always jokingly say that sustainer giving is my love language, because I really like this particular type of giving within our sector, and the opportunity that we get to not only get the generosity from our donors, but we have a real opportunity to reach back out and touch them with not only what our organization does, but to value them as just humans, as generous humans. So today, some of the things that we'll focus on are really kind of our three headlines, or the potential impact of a sustainer program for your organization. That's kind of for our new folks who are really looking to start that. Identifying how you identify those prospects in your file, as well as strategies for retaining and enhancing your program's growth. So let's go ahead and jump right in. Most of us know this is very basic. What a recurring giving program is, it's really just when donors give on some kind of regular basis or frequency. Often it's quarterly or monthly, but for the purposes of our time today, we're really going to lean in on monthly giving, and how these donors commit to giving on a monthly basis, or kind of what we're seeing so much in our society today is really almost the subscription sort of economy. So when we think about sustainer giving in the macro environment, there's a lot of signs that tell us this is the way we need to be leaning into our program and how we interact with our donors in a way to help really sustain what we're doing for the great missions that we're working on. So first of all, some of the economic signals. It's no secret to anybody, the things that we're seeing going on. We're seeing inflation, we're seeing the impact of tariffs, companies that are having layoffs. as well as just the consumer sentiment. In fact, I was looking at the PR Newswire today, and the consumer confidence index actually fell by 1.3% this month over where it was last month. So we're seeing some of that angst and things that folks are actually experiencing. And today also our unemployment rate is at about 4.2%, which is slightly up from where we were in July. So again, just looking at some of the things that we're seeing from an economic standpoint. And then looking philanthropically, kind of some of the things that we've seen over the course of this last year. Most of us have seen some of the early results that have come out from Giving USA, looking at charitable giving for 2024. And the good news is that we actually saw a rebound in 2024, where giving got to nearly 600 billion. So very close to where we were in the pandemic year, slightly less than that, but a rebound from 2023. And it was really led by growth in the folks that we talk to most, which is individuals, but also corporations. When we look at the donor pool overall, what we're seeing is there is some shrinkage that's happening. I know many of you have probably seen that with your own organizations. And some of the early fundraising effectiveness project shows that the market, or our sector, shrunk about 1% in terms of those donors giving, even though the revenue was up. And where we were seeing growth among donors was among major donors, but also the group of donors that we're talking about right now, and that's sustainers. In some cases, sustainers grew over 6%. And when we looked at the sectors that benefited most from sustainer growth, it was really three: the public society benefit, which increased by 16%, international affairs, which increased by 14%, and education, which increased by nearly 10%. So just a plug there for, as we network in our sector with other development leaders, maybe lean into some of your friends who are working in some of these sectors in public society and international affairs and education to kind of hear some of the tips and tricks that they used during this past year to really grow and lean into their recurring giving programs. And then finally, when we look at consumer trends, the subscription economy is not slowing down. In fact, this year is predicted to grow by 500 billion. And by the end of this year, being a 1.5 trillion sector or economy by the time we get to the end of this year. And then also the idea of omni-channel experiences. I know many of us are doing this already within our organization, but when we think about sustainers, really omni-channel experiences and sustainer speak is about personalization and how we create those donor experiences that are unique, that honor their loyalty, that offer variety, convenience, that provides those distinctions for this donor that's really given us access to a bank account or given us access to a credit card, and how we honoring that, the relationship. And I think one of the things I want to mention, it's really critical now too, because all of so many of the organizations in our nonprofit sector, we're seeing a little bit of contraction in those budgets and that sort of thing. But one thing we need to make sure we don't do is contract some of those stewardship touches, because they're critically important for this particular type of donor. And then finally, when we look at what donors are telling us, and specifically generationally, there's all kinds of ways folks are giving: the one-time donation, giving to specific campaigns or in-person and virtual events, or becoming an annual donor. But the one I want to highlight and kind of hone in on is those donors from a generational standpoint that are talking about becoming monthly donors. And what we see is the two youngest generations are most apt to actually say, when they decide to give, they are going to give as a monthly donor. So I'm talking millennials and Gen Z. So that is very much in line with where we want to be leaning, following the trends that we see that I just shared, and just really being where donors want to be. So with that, Amy is going to jump into why we should even focus on sustainer giving.
Thanks, Kim. So before we really get into this, why focus on sustainer giving at a macro level? All levels of giving are important. We know this to the revenue mix, but recurring giving can build a strong, steady foundation to mitigate some of the volatility that we're seeing. Kim mentioned the major and mid-level gifts can be more episodic, and turnover is seen among newer low-level donors. It's also important because as a fundraising leader, you can't afford not to. So we see Aunt B here. If you guys recognize this slide, I always tell Kim this is my favorite slide of the whole presentation. So I hope you guys recognize her. We can move on to the next though. So on to long-term retention. As nonprofit leaders, you know attrition is all percent. Sustainers are different. So retention is closer to 80% in year one, and it can reach as high as 95% by year five. That stability translates into lifetime value more than 4 times greater than that of a one-time donor. So huge. Many monthly donors stay with you for 5 to 7 years or more. And the big takeaway is really this: a sustainer program is not a side project. It is one of the most reliable ways to combat donor churn and stabilize your fundraising. And I'm going to drop a little bit of a truth bomb here. If you do not invest in your sustainer program or in sustainers in general, you'll spend the rest of your organization's your career in the hamster wheel of acquisition. So it's really important to focus on sustainer giving and what we're talking about today. The next thing is increased revenue. Recurring givers also give more. The average gift is about $52 a month, or $624 a year, which is much higher than the average gift of a one-time or single gift from a donor. It's easier for donors, it's more efficient for your organization. On top of that, you see hidden benefits. There's cost benefits in mail, stronger planned giving pipelines, and more traction with younger donors who already prefer subscriptions. So as Kim mentioned earlier, that's a subscription-based economies for millennials, Gen Z, even Gen X we're seeing. So that's why sustainers should really be treated as a core audience, not just an add-on. And then we get into mission focused, and this is really where freedom comes in for your staff, your organization. That predictable recurring revenue reduces cash flow stress and allows you to plan with confidence. So that means that your team can spend less time chasing the next urgent appeal, the next single gift, and more time focusing on your mission and long-term strategy. So this is kind of helping you build a financial backbone to your program, gives your organization stability, and the board and finance team kind of that stability that they're asking for as well. It also creates community. We're going to talk about this in depth in a little while. Kim will show some great examples. But beyond dollars, sustainers create community. They see themselves as part of a movement, not just as individual donors. So they can become ambassadors who recruit others. They bring energy and credibility far beyond that monthly gift. So that sense of belonging is really powerful to donors. And in a moment, we'll go over some examples of how you can do that with things like Facebook and social, and really just building that aspect of your sustainer program to kind of drive that force. All right, and Kim, defining the art and science.
All right. This is kind of the fun part for me because I think it really helps us look at our programs in an interesting way. So a solid sustainer program really is out to balance the idea of the science portion of how you are executing against this particular program and donor, as well as the art. So, we've observed what a science, I guess, when I think about the science portion of it, it's really the information that we can observe and we can measure So it's that aspect of the program that really builds on data gathering and applies proven strategies and tactics, which we'll get into today. It uses technology to help plan and to evaluate and analyze what that donor data is actually telling you so that you can make better decisions and make sure that your ROI for the program is where it needs to be. And then the art part of the program is really that aspect that where we ascertain the information from the interactions that we have with donors. So it's that aspect of the program that really draws people in. It keeps their interest with compelling stories and talking about the impact that they're making with their gifts together with the organization. It provides those opportunities for deeper engagement and belonging. And it really is where we build that heart connection with the organization. And if we take it a step further, science really answers the who, the what, the when, the where, as we think about our sustainer program. It uses that technology to leverage both first party and third party data. It quantifies the impact that these donors are making on your organization. It also has you to really get focused around what are the evergreen strategies, those blocking and tackling things that we need to always have in place that's really going to help both grow and sustain this type of donor, and then the catalytic growth strategies. When do we need to really pulse out and focus on maybe a recruitment strategy for a month in some kind of campaign, or twice a year where we really lean into that type of giving? And then it also, the science of it utilizes an omni-channel approach. So we're going to unpack all of that in the next section here. And then the art portion, it really seeks to understand why people give. Why are they drawn to my mission? And even further, why are they drawn to give to my mission on a monthly basis? It helps builds that brand that people are proud to represent. There are many organizations that have their recurring gift programs, and those folks who give in that way actually refer to themselves as the branded name that the organization has selected. Demonstrates the value through the impact and benefits. There are some donors who are going to give because they just love and enjoy your mission, but there are times, many times, when we need to give them a reason, kind of show them the with them, the what's in it for them as well. The art also creates those intentional touch points that drive retention. How can we really reward, whether in the tangible or intangible ways, this donor who's giving in this special way? And then finally, as an organization, it really seeks to serve this special group well. You'll remember in the beginning, Amy talked about this donor, 1 in 7 will become a planned gift donor to your organization. So that's not necessarily a major, looking at a major donor or even a mid-level donor, but this is somebody who has loved your organization enough that they want to leave part of their legacy to you. So how do we make sure that we're serving this group well? Now, Amy's going to jump right into the science of it all.
Yeah. So the science, as fundraisers, recruitment is your first major strategic decision. Where do you direct your limited time and resources? Sustainer programs succeed when you're really deliberate about who you bring in. So recruitment is not a volume game. It's about targeting the right profiles and knowing that some groups are far more likely to say yes than others. So who do you target? This slide is really the playbook for recruitment focus. Your best prospects fall into a few different categories, and that starts with our loyal donors. Those who have given 4 or more gifts in a year, they've already shown that commitment and trust to your organization. We also have new donors who have just made their first gift. So this is a really critical window for new donors where enthusiasm is really high. They're excited. This is a perfect opportunity in a new welcome series to invite them into your monthly program. We also have younger donors who are used to that subscription model. They love Netflix. They order their clothes through a subscription model. A monthly gift feels really natural to them. It's a natural way for them to give. It's easy. They don't have to think about it. And then also we go to our older donors who are on a fixed income. We want to make this as easy as possible for them too. we can set them up so that they don't have to think about it as well. And giving them that predictable giving that they can budget for, that's a really important piece for older donors, especially on that fixed income. So the really big note here is not to try to convert everyone right away. We want to focus our resources on the segments that are most likely to commit. And that's really, really where you'll see growth without wasting staff time and marketing dollars. And then looking at some data tools, once you know who to target, the next question is really how to find them. And this is where modeling comes in. So Allegiance Group and Pursuant has this really amazing tool called Giving DNA. And this combines your first party data with enhanced third party data. And it scores and prioritizes your donors. So you can go in here and determine who your best prospects for sustainer giving are. This could work for mid-level planned giving, et cetera, as well. But this is a really important resource decision for leadership to make. Do you invest in data modeling so that your team can target intelligently? Organizations that do tend to see dramatically better conversion rates. So something to think about there. The other thing that's really important and where storytelling and finance meet is quantifying your impact. So instead of saying we need $950,000 for training, you really need to break that down for your donors. So after your committed funds, so you know we need we need $54,000 a month. Break that down to $67.50 to train one teacher. And Megan, if we could go to actually the next slide here, this will help us a little bit. That's a number that donors can visualize. So equip your staff with impact stories, but also with these breakdowns. They transform these abstract budgets that you may have into compelling reasons to give monthly. So I couldn't give $950,000 in one gift, but I can give $67.50 a month to train a teacher. So that makes it easy. Planning. So this is also really important. Let's start with determining your evergreen recruiting strategy. So this really means recurring gifts are built into your daily fundraising work. It's not treated as a one-off campaign. So this really requires you to align across channels and across your organization. Direct mail, email, digital, phone. It's not about a single push. It's about embedding your sustainer program at every stage across the donor journey. So we set the expectation that monthly giving is a part of your organization's culture, not just a campaign tactic. And then we go to catalytic campaign recruiting strategies. So this is your way to create momentum. If evergreen gets you steady growth, catalytic campaigns create momentum. These are time-bound pushes with themes, goals, incentives that create urgency, and they really require multi-channel orchestration. So again, with mail, email, social, Kim mentioned the omni-channel part being super important. This is where we really develop that. So a great catalytic campaign doesn't just bring in new sustainers, but it also rallies your community up.
Yeah, and if I could just add one thing, Amy, that back on one other slide, if you can go back one more, Megan, to that evergreen strategy, we know that donors are going to sometimes need to leave. So, Amy talked earlier about having that welcome that you bring people in, but it's just as important to have an offboarding strategy. So how do you set up in your technology that if somebody is saying they want to cancel their gift, that we give them the opportunity to, we're asking the question, do you just want to pause for a month or two, or do you want to reduce your giving? And having those ways to see if we can mitigate the risk of actually losing that donor. But if they still need to leave, just being gracious and recognizing that, all those economic things that we talked about earlier are real for folks. But when you can step down that offboarding in a way that still honors what they've already done and invites them to come back in the future, many will. We saw that quite a bit during the pandemic where folks were losing their jobs and they had to step back. But the way the organizations handled that offboarding really made that door swing wide open for folks to come back when they regain those resources. They never lost love for the organization. So make sure you continue to steward and cultivate even those folks, because those warm prospects are the ones that are going to come back.
Mm-hmm. All right. And then messaging. So this is really our connective tissue. It has to be consistent across all channels. So mail, phone, text, digital should all be integrated. So you must push for that omni-channel approach internally. So donors experience that seamless journey no matter where they engage. We don't want to confuse our donors by having a different offer for sustainer giving in direct mail versus email versus on social media. So making sure that that is really consistent is important. And now we'll go into the art, the fun stuff.
Great. All right. So the first thing we want to think about as we look at our folks who are in this kind of program, let's understand why they actually give. And I want to, for some people, this will be a new concept. For others, you may have heard this before, but there really are in our sector two different types of organization. One is a closed loop organization. And what I mean by that is the donor who is giving is also the recipient of the product, the service, whatever it is that the organization does as their mission. This donor is deriving direct benefit from the organization. By and large, though, many of our organizations are open loop organizations where the donor is not the recipient. These are just people who don't necessarily, like I said, receive any benefit or even expect a direct benefit from the organization, but the mission moves their heart. So that puts us in a kind of nuanced place when we think about how we talk to them and how we target them and the case for support that we want to build for them actually giving in this unique way. So I think it's important for us to understand that while our organization certainly has a case for support, it's also critical that we take a step back and really look at our sustainer case for support. And that starts with understanding our organization's unique value proposition. At the end of this presentation, you will have a QR code that you can scan to get our resource that talks all about how you get to your unique value proposition. But just from a basic standpoint, it's two influential factors that we need to consider as we think about that. Number one is the appeal. How badly do I, as the donor, really want what the organization is offering? Is this a problem that matters to me that the organization is actually solving? And will giving to this cause make me feel good? So as you think through that from a broad-based standpoint, your overall case for support, what about what it means on a monthly giving basis? Because what we know, oftentimes we get a lot of those lower level donors who are giving. So we need to really make sure that we're sharpened on that appeal because when people have limited resources, they need to be able to answer some of those questions. And then the exclusivity. Could I get what this organization is doing somewhere else? You know, why should I, if this organization is also digging wells and this one over here is digging wells, why should I, as a donor, let's define that for them. Why should I care about it the way it's done over here? So play up those things that make you unique. There may be two organizations that are doing social value benefit, but if you're targeting, say, a religious or faith-based donor, that's an area that you can lean into a little bit more that makes it a little bit different than a non-religious organization who's doing similar work. So making sure you pull those things out and making sure we help those donors see, answer that second question is, would doing something else make me feel just as good? And being able to say, but when you give here, this is the impact that that you're actually making, and being able to prove that out. I think some of the other things that are so critical that we're seeing in sustainer programs, certainly there are organizations that just call their monthly donors, but there's something special about branding your program. This is just a couple of examples. Charity Water calls their monthly partners the spring, the folks who are there bringing, I mean, if you think about a spring, it's something that refreshes, it brings clean water to a situation. There's joy in that refreshment. And so folks who are part of that call themselves a part of the spring. Another organization, the Pan Foundation, they use the idea of monthly donors, but they call those donors gems. So giving every month is what GEM stands for. But again, it's a kind of a double entendre because gems are precious. They are something of value. And then of course, St. Jude calls their monthly donors partners in hope. So again, thinking through what about my organization can I use to brand this program so that people want to be a part of it? And then leaning into, similar to what Amy just went through, how do I quantify the monthly giving impact? And then I'm talking about exclusive benefits just for the folks who tend to give in this way. And then showcasing, as Amy mentioned, across all your communication channels. So brand is important. Benefits. This one always gets a lot of talk because some organizations say, well, we don't have, the tangible things to give, but there's always things that you can give. So the purpose really of benefits is to recognize this donor, to add value to the relationship that you have with them, and then to increase loyalty and engagement. So some of the tangible things that we can do with this special group of folks are having impact reports. Now, most organizations are creating impact reports that they give to all donors. But one of the ways to make it special is your monthly donors get it before everybody else, or get it a week before, or get it in a format that's a little bit different. So there's always ways to kind of nuance that. I know for faith-based organizations, they usually, and even other public benefit, will have on-topic books that they share that really help people to understand just a little bit more about the mission that they have. Membership gear, sometimes we call the trinkets and trash, but some people like that. So there's membership gear that you can use. Annual calendars. Wall calendars are actually still really popular, especially when they include beautiful design or pictures that help people to know more about your mission and that sort of thing. And then product and event discounts if that's particular to your mission. And then some of the non-tangible benefits, which have just as big of, if not more impact, are the conference calls where you're gathering your monthly donors and you're sharing something that maybe is not shared out to everyone. Facebook chats, private online groups. I'm going to get into one example of an organization who has a private Facebook group for their donors who give on a monthly basis. And that group has really kind of come together and gelled, and they see themselves as the strategic partner, and they welcome new people to the group. Webinars, and then special behind the scenes access is really, really important for, again, this donor who is giving to you in a special way. They are trusting you with a bank account. They are trusting you with a credit card. So what are the ways that you can really show your loyalty back to them? And then of course, those unpublished benefits, those things that just surprise and delight. And sometimes it can be that, you had this event and you guys have some leftover gear, and you just decide to send that out to all of your recurring givers, or just downloadable things that have been created and they're just for, so just, they don't necessarily show up in your list of benefits, but it gives you once a quarter or a couple times a year an opportunity to pull something out special that just really surprises and delights these folks, again, that are giving to you in a special way. Retention. This one is super critical. I saw a recent article that talked about the fact that many new recurring donors are kind of your most at risk to kind of stop their giving. And some of them stop because they just didn't even get an immediate thank you. So think about ways to do that beyond just if you know, if a direct mail receipt is one of the ways, but a quick postcard that just welcomes them to the monthly giving team. Even voice broadcasts are amazing ways to really welcome those folks every month. If you know that you're having some cadence of new monthly donors come in, you know, work with a provider of those automated calls that you set up, just record it once, and you can, every time those new people come in once a month, you're sending out that thank you to and you know, thank them for becoming a part of this special group and reminding them of what they mean to the organization. I think a dedicated staff person is another big area where organizations can miss the mark, not having this special group of donors be assigned to someone. As Amy mentioned earlier on, this is not an afterthought. This has got to be embedded in the culture of the way you recruit and sustain your donors. So having that person who is actually responsible for this program, that these donors, should they have a problem, I mean, we know that there's so much credit card fraud going on. So people are getting new credit cards or having to get new credit cards. And so they need to have someone that I know I can call Amy Reynolds, because she is the person for the monthly giving program that I can talk to directly and give new information to. And I don't have to send an email to info@xyzorganization.com. Cultivating with higher personalization, people are getting that in all their other experiences. And so how do you, as a nonprofit, certainly with limited resources, but how do you cultivate those higher personalizations when they're receiving emails, when they're receiving mails, that you're identifying them, even if they're still in the mail stream in some way, that you're still identifying them as one of your special monthly partners. Providing that special content and communication that kind of falls under our benefits, making sure they get an annual contribution summary, and then upgrading, asking for greater impact. Amy's going to get into that a little bit later, but just because they are now become a monthly donor doesn't mean we need to totally set it and forget it. These are our among our most valuable donors. So we want to give them other opportunities to actually lean into the mission and to be of benefit, whether it's financially, through volunteering, or other ways. And then finally, making sure that they are included in any information that talks about planned giving, because we know they have high conversion in that area as well. I talked about staffing. And so as you think about your program, at minimum, there should be one full-time staff person who owns and manages this program. It's even better if we can have that additional person who supports those unique data needs, including segmentation and file hygiene and preferences. Again, we're talking about the art and the science. And I think what's interesting about talking about a sustainer program from an art and science standpoint is sometimes are going to be people who are just naturally better at the science part and naturally better at the relationship building part. So having those two people, bringing those two folks together, can be really powerful for the organization. And then optimally, if your organization is large enough and this donor base warrants it, having that third person who's really that digital practitioner and partner, who's skilled at digital fundraising, who's skilled at automation and omnichannel marketing, so that we can kind of come in over the top and add those other special touches. And then finally, serving. Again, it's not a set it and forget it kind of programming. We need to understand who the people are in this kind of program. Amy talked about our special tool, Giving DNA. One of the great things about Giving DNA is it allows us to upload that group of folks and look at the demographics and preferences and where else they're giving to, and being able to lean in a little bit more to that and look at the folks who are maybe available for upgrading because of how they're giving other places. Personalization is that area that's going to help them feel known. So as you continue to build on your program, making sure that you're finding those ways to make sure these folks feel known by your organization. Creating and communicating special opportunities for additional impact, listening and exercising sensitivity to their requests. There are going to be some that say, hey, I'm giving to you monthly. Please don't send me in another appeal. We need to honor that. Not everybody's going to say it, but we do need to honor it. And even in honoring that, there are times you still may want to reach out and say, it's not for a gift ask, but this is for, I want you to know about a special thing that we have going on. You're one of our, very best donors. So I want you to see the impact that you're continuing to make and what some of our other friends are leaning into. And then surprise and delight, as I mentioned, and then always be gracious, even when a donor has to leave. So I'm going to show a quick program example here because I want to leave some time for question and answers. And Amy has a couple more just optimization things that she's going to get through. Stand to Reason is a faith-based organization based out of Southern California. And beyond just doing just every month blocking and tackling types of things, having in place the items that we've talked about over the course of this presentation is they have an annual campaign every year called Be One of the 100. They're actually in the midst of it right now here in August. We started this with them in 2019 and it continues through today. As they look at promoting this campaign, they definitely utilize a multi-channel approach. They send out a postcard preemptively. Then there's emails throughout the month of August. Their website is all focused around recruiting those new strategic partners, which is the name of their monthly donors. They have social media, both ads as well as organic social. And then they actually have an online radio show where the president of the organization, as well as board members throughout the month, as well as even some folks who are already currently strategic partners, actually come on and talk about why they give in this way. There's usually an incentive. They include a progress bar or some type of way to track like how they're doing on their recruiting of 100 new strategic partners annually, and the gratitude at the end of the campaign. And then they welcome these new members of the monthly giving program into their exclusive Facebook group. So the next slide just shows a little bit of the campaign assets that they use. They've created a whole logo for this that they use every year for this type of program. Obviously, the content changes and the focus, but every year it's Be One of the 100. And then they have retention afterwards that really focuses in. They actually have youth events around the country. And so they invite those strategic partners the morning of that big event for a special breakfast, people within 500-mile radius. They do about 60 events across the country, and they give these donors an opportunity to kind of see their mission up front and in person. They have a dedicated staff person. They provide those that impact report and have different throughout the year. They have one or two surprise and delight exclusive resources. And the big thing here is really the impact that it's made on their organization. Today, 56, in any given year, 56 to 63% of their annual revenue is coming from monthly recurring giving. Their average gift when we started this campaign back in 2019 was $54.66. And today that average gift is $76.10. They've experienced 41% growth in monthly donors since we started this campaign in 2019. Again, this is above and beyond just the monthly things that they have in place. This is around their catalytic event, and they have an average retention rate of 88%. I was looking back at when we started this campaign and where we are today, and they have recruited nearly 1,000 new monthly partners. And I mean, you can do the math, looking at 1,000 new monthly partners at an average gift of $76.10 per month, and what that then does to your annual revenue. So it is doable. One of the things, of course, about this organization, it's a closed loop organization. So the folks that give to it also benefit from it, from the content. It's about clear thinking Christianity, about how to just understand your faith as well as to defend your faith in the marketplace of ideas. But we've seen similar types of things with organizations that are also open loop, once you have a lot of these key things in place.
All right, optimizing your program. So let's talk a little bit about storytelling. I have a video for you in just a second, but optimization really starts with storytelling. Facts inform, but stories are going to inspire. Donors want to know what happens after their gift. They want to feel urgency to connect emotionally. And leadership must ensure that their organizations are investing in story collection and creative content, not just reporting. So this is one of the most powerful levers that you can really control. I think Kim and I have both worked with organizations who do not have storytelling stories in their collection that we can use, and it dampens the campaigns that we're working from. So I want to show you an example of some really great storytelling from Water for People. It's a really short clip, about a minute and a half. We'll go through to just show an example of something really strong that one organization is doing.
Me imagino un pajarito o un colibrí. En los bosques de Cachil, en la montaña. Lo puedo llamar Lupita. Se desliza por los árboles. Se encontró con muchos amigos. Tenía mucha sed. Se sentían mareados y cansados. De pronto lo descubrieron. Síganme al río.
The stories like that really help prevent donor fatigue. Donors want to hear new stories. It gets them engaged. It inspires them to give again. So I can't say enough about having strong storytelling in your messaging, especially for your sustainers who are giving and hearing about your program on a regular basis. And then reactivation, when we're optimizing, attrition is inevitable. Excuse me, inevitable, but you can really plan for it. So most sustainers who lapse do so because of an expired credit card, not because they've lost interest. Or like Kim said, maybe their credit card was stolen, they had to cancel, etc. So ensuring you have a structured reactivation strategy, emails, calls, even handwritten notes, can bring many of them back. So you want to make sure that these systems are in place and staffed appropriately. Otherwise, you can really leave money on the table. So remind donors when you're going back to them for reactivation about the impact and the benefits to create that FOMO. And then downloadable resources are always great to introduce your program again and remind them to give again, or a discount code for a product if you offer those online to demonstrate the value of your organization. We also talked a little bit earlier about upgrading. So upgrades, again, are a growth strategy. Sustainers are already invested in your program, and with a right case for support, they are often prepped to give more. So the key really is intentionality here, planning, upgrading campaigns. You want to train your staff with scripts and make sure you're measuring results at the end. And this is how you really deepen that commitment with your donors over time. So you want to build about 1 to 2 initiatives over the year to monetize impact. Um, Single annual ask for an upgraded gift. And I have an example over here where your monthly giving level starts for your donors and what you can use for an ask upgrade. We use this for a specific organization, and it works really well. You want to utilize this how it works for your organization. This is not a blanketed upgrade strategy. Um, but then you want to build a script around this. So thank you for your support. Give them a recount of their current giving level, and then provide that case for support why they should upgrade. And then always have a lower upgrade amount available if they decline the first one. And then, of course, thanking them for their current faithfulness to your organization, even if they aren't able to upgrade. Single gift growth. So sustainers don't just give monthly. There's also opportunities for single one-time gifts. I would say limit to no more than 4 asks a year, but tied to meaningful events like year-end, maybe emergencies or special campaigns. So it's really about balance, asking for that single gift, maximize opportunity without burning out your most loyal donors is really what it's about. And then finally, here's some additional takeaways. You want to clarify your unique value proposition. Kim mentioned that there is an activity QR code at the end of this that you guys can all take part in. Validate your top 3 whys: convenience, certainty, and connection. Use AI to enhance learning, language, and donor journeys. And remove barriers that make monthly giving difficult. You are responsible for simplifying and not complicating the donor's journey. And finally, commit to testing and learning. Join other sustainer programs, be a secret shopper, and see how they're treating their donors. And build a culture of continuous improvement. So track those testing that we talked about, and continue testing. So if something doesn't work, try something else. If something doesn't work, that is a learning as well. It's not a failure. So always remember that.
Amazing. Thank you, Kim and Amy. I really appreciate your time today. It looks like we do have a few questions in the chat, but before we move over to there, I just wanted to allow you guys a few minutes to scan the QR codes here. As Kim mentioned, we have a resource, Discovering Your Nonprofit's UVP, a step-by-step guide that actually walks you through how to create your UVP, and then a storytelling resource, Behind the Story, for collecting story research and learning how to tell your story in a really effective way. The QR codes under both Kim and Amy's name are also little contact cards for them. If you have additional questions, feel free to scan those and get in contact with them. Jumping into some of the questions we received, our organization has about 30 sustaining donors. We get a sense that some of them feel somewhat barraged by too frequent communication, especially via email. Any advice you'd share?
Yeah. I think it was said in the context of that single gift growth slide that Amy shared, but you really do need to have, sit down and think through strategically what should be the communication cadence for these people who've now converted to a different style of giving. We had a client that actually had monthly donors, but they were asking them 8 times out of 12 months in direct mail, and that didn't even include what they were asking them for, in the email realm. So that probably is a little too much. So think through what that should look like. Are there, just based on what your mission is, are there some special occasions that you should, have that additional ask that, kind of provides that upgrading? Also, what are the stewardship touches that you have? I don't know that it wasn't clear in the information there in terms of too many emails, but what is your balance of asking and stewardship? So maybe some of those, if you have a quarterly, for instance, newsletter or some kind of impact maybe it's making sure that you're hitting those stewardship touch points so that they continue to stay engaged and understand how their giving is making an impact, but be very prudent and nuanced in the additional asks that they get. One of the things with the organization I mentioned, when we kind of peeled back the numbers and looked at how those donors were responding to all this direct mail that they were receiving, we found that the ROI on it wasn't even positive, because those donors do see themselves as already giving to you on a monthly basis. So we was, again, art and science, dig into the numbers, dig into the data to truly understand what's happening in your file, what's happening with this particular group of donors. And that will help to inform the strategies then and the communication cadence that you put in front of them. Amy, would you add anything else to that?
I think you covered it pretty well. Just making sure that your communication is intentional, and that you're listening to your donors too.
Perfect. We've got another question. Have your clients or the organizations here, have you guys seen any trends with monthly giving? It seems that they have started tracking new donors and have dropped monthly givers more closely to the fiscal year. It seems like many are canceling due to finances and lost jobs. Have you guys noticed a trend there?
I think that we'll start seeing a little bit more of a trend sooner, or excuse me, in the future, in the near future, than what we're seeing in the first half of 2025. But it really is the political and economic stance that we're in right now. It kind of ebbs and flows. So we'll just kind of have to wait and see what happens in this kind of second half reporting that we see. I would say some of the best ways to combat that is to ensure your donors know that they can pause, number one, if they need to. They can reduce the amount that they're giving monthly if that is an option. But we really want to make sure your donors are aware that if that is a struggle for them, if they've lost their jobs, their monthly income has been reduced, that there are ways that they can still make an impact to your organization.
And I'm going to give the consultant answer of it depends.
Yeah.
I think everything that Amy said was spot on, but I think it also depends on what your mission is right now. And whether you as an organization have done a good job, just really serving that particular client, that particular donor. Some are still going to have to, because just, pure financial reasons. How you handle that offboarding. Just case in point, we have 2 clients right now in the midst of recruiting campaigns this month. The one I just mentioned, of their 100 goal, they're at 112. Another one at their 125 goal today, they're at I think 85. So it really just and again, the difference is one is a closed loop organization, the one that's already eclipsed their goal. The other is an open organization. They are giving because they love the mission and they have not quite gotten to the goal. So I think being able to share with the donors why what you're doing is so important, making sure you align that back with what they have already shown you or told you were their values, and being able to then communicate that in a way that's compelling, that even says that a $10 gift or whatever, because I know some organizations do have a floor just based on what it costs you transactionally to service that kind of donor. Whatever your floor is, maybe it is, even if it's a $15 gift or a $20 gift, if your average gift is a little bit higher, but giving people choice, I think helps with being able to maintain as well as even recruit some of those new donors. Leaning into what is actually going on and why, because in light of what's going on, why your mission is even all the more important. That's the other thing we're seeing a lot more of, and that's those organizations that are doing that are not shying away from what's going on in the external environment, and then really superimposing what they do and why it's important, are still seeing great results with giving. because we kind of, it's easy for us to paint everybody with a broad brush that everybody must be experiencing, you know, the impact of tariffs or the impact of layoffs. And honestly, they're not. They're not, but you've got to build that case because there is a lot of fear out there. And some people will stop giving just for fear of what could happen. But if we're building those alliances and helping them to see the alignment of our organization with their values, and having those outreach, if you have a volunteer staff, how are you engaging that group to reach out to some of these very important donors in ways that are going to be meaningful for them? Because that is what is going to create the stickiness for your organization.
Mm-hmm. Very important reminder. Thank you, Kim. We are at just about at time. If you guys can stick around, I've got one more question for you. Can you talk a little about segmentation? How important do you think it is to segment recurring givers, thinking specifically about giving levels? We wouldn't have staff capacity to do more than one outreach, but I'm wondering how effective one outreach strategy could be across those giving levels.
Do you want to take that, Amy? Or
Well, I think we need a little bit more information on the question. Are you thinking segmentation across your current donors and segmenting for a recruitment? If so, I would say having a single recruitment effort is worthwhile, and not if you're not able to segment or to find your audience. I would say I would still try a recruitment effort if it's within your budget. Sustainer programs are so important right now. If that is not within your wheelhouse or your budget, I would still go out with a sustainer recruitment mailing once a year. But I would look into how to make that possible, whether working with a smaller organization or data agency to help you segment those and find your audience. I hope I'm answering the right question.
well, I think I'm looking at it here in the Q&A box, and I think also they're talking about segmenting the recurring donors by giving level. I do think that there is a level at which somebody's monthly giving puts them in the category of a mid-level donor, for instance, or puts them in the category of a major donor. So as that happens, look at the other tactics that you're using for those standalone folks who are mid-level donors and those standalone folks who are major donors, and look at possibly testing into some of the things that you're already doing, that you already have in place for that level of donor, and just start, take a segment of those folks and see if by applying some of the things that you're already doing with your mid-level donors, if you're able to, for instance, convert more from an upgrade standpoint to maybe gain additional single gifts. Some of your lower level donors, it is going to be more of just sustaining that relationship, continuing to engage them, making sure that they understand their impact. But those donors who have shown that by their monthly gift, they're truly, really giving at a mid-level, then start to apply some of those things that you're doing again at some of those higher levels, and engaging them in different ways. And a lot of it's folks is really going to come down to testing. What maybe works well for another organization is not going to work as well for your organization. But absorbing what you're hearing from webinars like this, as well as some of the information that's in the marketplace, talking to your colleagues. And I shared earlier kind of where the big growth areas were in recurring giving this year. Reach out to folks, even if you don't have friends in these other sectors in public service or education. I mean, everybody's on LinkedIn. And you would be surprised how many people are willing to spend the time to talk with you about some of the things that they've done. When people get wins, they are excited about that and they want to share. So use your networks that you know of, as well as networks that you can build through tools like LinkedIn.
Great advice. Don't be scared to reach across the aisle and start a conversation with somebody. There's always great learning to be had there. Well, we are just about 5 minutes over time, so I think we can wrap everything up here. If there's a few additional questions, we can round those up and answer those in our follow-up email, where we'll share the recording to this as well as the slides. You'll notice in the slide deck there are a few additional resources both Kim and Amy have put together that'll help you as you're starting to reframe your sustainer program. So thanks again. Thanks to Kim and Amy, and thank you to everyone for joining us.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.